Breaking right now, growing fears that Jill Dando may have been murdered because she was attempting to expose a paedophile ring within the BBC. Now, I believe that Jill Dando's death remains probably Britain's most high-profile unsolved crime. And it is very shocking to me how the mainstream media, and especially the BBC itself, has backed away from revealing the truth about this story for so long. The Daily Mirror is having a real go at it at the moment, focusing on the idea that it could have been the assassin Milorad Ulamek who was responsible for Jill Dando's death. But what I cannot get over is the fact that there has never been a proper investigation about the fact that Jill Dando had raised the alarm about the paedophile ring at the BBC before she was killed. I mean, this report from the Daily Express was in 2014, and she knew that there were big name stars involved. That was according to a former colleague. Now, I can tell you that I have also spoken to former colleagues of Jill Dando personally who believe that there must desperately be an investigation over the fact that she was trying to expose what was going on at the BBC and that no one wanted to know. You will remember that the 37-year-old TV presenter was shot dead on the doorstep of her home on the 26th of April 1999 in an event that completely stunned the nation. The source said of Jill and her, I guess, desperate attempt to expose what was going on at the BBC, said that there were surprisingly big names involved. And they went on to say, I think she was quite shocked when told about images of children and that information on how to join this horrible paedophile ring was freely available. Jill said others had complained to her about sexual matters and that some female workmates also claimed they had been assaulted. Nothing had been done, and there seemed to be a policy of turning a blind eye. Let me bring in my superstar panel now, host of the Hearts of Oak podcast, Peter McIlvenna, and the woman behind the true crime YouTube sensation, Emma Kenny True Crime. And Emma, I know this is a case that you have looked at yourself, but can I just ask you first about the fact that this paedophile ring operating at the BBC was kept secret by so many for so long and was so ingrained within the organisation, Emma, that not only was their biggest star, Jimmy Savile, the worst paedophile in British history, but he was being supported by an entire network of paedophiles, including the drivers that used to be paid for by the BBC to drop these young children off all the time. I mean, it was truly astonishing what was going on. And there would have been so much motivation back in the 1990s when everyone still thought Jimmy Savile was a hero to shut Jill Dando up. Surely, given that this crime remains unsolved to this day, it is at least worth serious investigation.
Yeah, I mean, she was like the Princess Diana of the media, really. And though she genuinely was, because she was known for her integrity, her kindness, her compassion. She's multifaceted as well in the way that she presented and the things that she did. So her death provoked a massive national and international storm, and yet we've never really solved it. Obviously, Barry George went to prison, but he was released. And I think that the investigations that have played out since, they have moved from saying that Barry George, don't get me wrong, they haven't completely exonerated him. He's not got his payout of 1.6 million yet because they say they need irrefutable proof that he didn't do it. But essentially, there have been investigations and believe that investigations have led to people thinking it was an execution. Now, again, some people will argue against that. For example, they left the cartridge. It was a hit in broad daylight. She wasn't meant to be visiting that particular property because she was selling it. So there are reasons why people don't believe necessarily it was. But more and more, it seems to be that she did tell those in charge that there was something untoward happening. We know that paedophiles and child molesters are absolutely engaged in powerful positions. They can't help themselves because it's all about about power. It's all about exerting control. There's no one you can be more exerting of control over than a child. And you always have people systematically who support you, because unfortunately, whether people want to acknowledge it or otherwise, and I cover this a lot on my channel, there are a lot of people who are attracted to children. It might be really disconcerting to accept. It might be really challenging to hold that knowledge. But let me tell you, the things I know that go on personally in my therapeutic work that I've worked with, but also professionally, because I know a lot of people who work in the areas of protecting children through the police, for example, who investigate those horrendous sites that exist. This is so popular. So of course, if you happen to have this predilection, you will surround yourself with other powerful people with that predilection, because it creates a safety net. Jill Dando apparently sent a dossier that's been denied by the BBC, but this seems to be general knowledge in a lot of areas. So for me, the bigger question is this: look, if you've nothing to hide, then let everybody investigate. Let them speak to all the people who were involved. Let them take responsibility for the failures that occurred. That's how people trust. So if there is nothing that can be brought out in this information, then you've nothing to be worried about. And don't get me wrong, there have been, as you were just saying, links to a warlord because there was a retaliation because of a bombing that happened at a particular network in Serbia. And the recognition of the fact the bullet was a particular German bullet that fitted the same identity as one used in an execution over there. So there were a lot of these kind of different parts, but certainly when it comes down to the BBC, they hid lots, and that makes you culpable, and that makes you really be the people who should be saying, we'll do everything in our power to be as transparent as possible and to hold those to account if they need to be held to account.
You're totally right, because, for example, you've seen big BBC figures like John Simpson prepared to weigh in behind the Daily Mirror and call for there to be a new investigation based on what you just outlined, but not when there were question marks about what Jill Dando actually knew about the BBC. Right. And Peter McIlvenna, the issue that I have with this is that the BBC has been marking its own homework for too long. It is a truly corrupt and disgusting organisation that, especially throughout the 80s and 90s, covered up the most shocking crimes. And if it had been a private company, it would have been shut down long ago. And I find it truly astonishing that the BBC has just been allowed to get away with saying, oh, no, we don't remember Jill Dando doing that, despite one of her former colleagues outlining in some detail that she did. And the reality is, Peter, there has been a paedophile ring operating at the BBC for decades, and any idea that that paedophile ring was over was surely blown to smithereens the moment that Hugh Edwards was convicted as a paedophile, the man who had run their news division to such an extent that he was given the power to announce the death of the late Queen Elizabeth II on air, despite these rumours about him circulating.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got concern we see in the media and the political realm of closing ranks and covering up people's crimes, and it does seem to be prevalent, and for this to have happened in the middle of the day, and yet it was the police didn't seem to be able to do their job. But no, again, the government don't want much investigation into the BBC. It's regarded as this national treasure, and they don't want that to be tarnished at all. God forbid people wouldn't pay their license fee, and then that would have an impact. So it seems to be protected hugely. I haven't followed this. I remember it vividly because Jill Dando was such a high-profile figure, as Emma said, and everyone watched Crimewatch, and she, as a journalist, was doing the work, was actually exposing wrong. And obviously, one of those stones, if not many, was one too far. And then she was removed. And the story about her actually exposing a paedophile ring, it seems to fit with what we know. But yet it's not something I've delved deeply into. But my concern is that the media roll out this 26 years later, And is it just because they're short of space in the newspaper? Is this a concerted effort to actually get justice? Because often you read stories in the media and it's not about justice. It's not about doing the right thing. It's about actually, this could sell. This sounds good. It ticks a few boxes, clickbait. And they are learning from the social media world. And my worry is this has been put out just as a clickbait story and isn't about getting justice.
But first, don't eat breakfast until you learn about caloric bypass. Your breakfast is setting you up for the entire day to either gain weight or lose it. The term breakfast literally means to break your fast that you started the night before. About 4 hours after you eat dinner, your body switches from the nutrients we get from food to the stored glycogen we have in our bodies. Once glycogen stores are depleted, typically after 8 to 12 hours of fasting, the body shifts to burning fat for energy. Fatty acids are released from fat stores, where they're converted into ketone bodies through a process called ketogenesis. Then, when you eat breakfast in the morning, the body starts the cycle again. This is where the caloric bypass comes into play. Dr. Gundry, a heart surgeon in California, learned that if you break your nightly fast with something called MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides, you can actually keep burning fat throughout the day and use it for energy. But there are specific types of food that contain these MCTs. Using this breakfast breakthrough, he was able to lose 70 pounds just through diet, and he did this in his 60s. You can find out all about it and his exact method by going to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. That's thehealthyfat.com/outspoken, or click on the link in the description box below, or use the QR code if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. It's on screen now. Now, it's important to remember that everyone's body processes fat differently, and it all depends on your unique metabolic type, which is why in the video he's released for my amazing Outspoken viewers, he talks all about it. It really is quite fascinating and might change the way you think about your health. So go to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken or click on the link in the description box below. But now, back to the show. I always think that's a really fair point to have to ask those questions, Emma Kenny. But for me, when it comes to the BBC, I think there's so much that we still don't know. I think there is so much that remains covered up, and there's so much reason for it to stay secret. I mean, remember, we didn't even know about all of the dodgy dealings behind Princess Diana and the Martin Bashir interview until Prince William really forced the hand of the corporation decades later. So I guess what I'm saying is it's so not beyond the BBC to institutionally cover something like this up. And I think, given the murder remains unsolved, all avenues should be pursued.
100%. If you've got nothing to hide, then you should be transparent and open, and you should be willing to drive that kind of investigation to get answers for the people who loved Jill Dando. And that's not just her family, that was a nation. The nation went into mourning when she died because people genuinely saw it as a cold-blooded execution. It's as simple as that. And when you actually consider the fact that we know every organization has skeletons and times have changed, culture has shifted, expectations have grown. And when you hold yourself to a standard, and the BBC does, the BBC says, we hold ourselves to a high standard, and lo behold, anybody who fails to do that, they will kind of be challenged in that way. Well, if that's the case, you have to hold yourself to the highest standard possible, no matter who that might impact on the way of finding that information out that might expose things that you're unhappy about. There are skeletons in every big organization's closet, but the thing that makes a difference is when people are willing to say, this went wrong, this was a failure, these people were responsible, we've investigated fully, and actually there's nothing to answer. That's acceptable as long as you can show the information and show the process and due diligence that was involved in that. That's where the failure is. The reason that she is still so profoundly important to the UK, because nobody doesn't know Jill Dando's name. It's as simple as that. Kids know Jill Dando's name because she has featured in so many documentaries and so many press articles, because people can't let it go. Why can't you let it go? Because there feels like there is something sinister beneath it. And that sinister flow beneath it could well be to do with protecting individuals who are molesting children. And that is something that provokes the most cerebral and visceral reaction from the British public. Believe me, the thing about the UK is that we are desperate to out these kind of individuals who harm our babies and harm our children and harm our young women and harm our young men. So we're not going to let it go. Dog bone reality. So that's what they should be doing.
Couldn't agree more. Now, Emma, tell me about the UK's relationship with true crime. Because obviously in America, this is like a mass market industry. But would you argue that maybe we've been a little bit more conservative over here until, of course, the launch of your YouTube channel, Emma Kenny True Crime, which has just exploded?
I'm very, very lucky. I'm very lucky that happened. But there are young creators in the UK who don't necessarily have my professional experience and stuff who are blowing up as well. You know, there are individuals that I just have such respect for, because I think to myself, I wish I'd done this 15 years ago. I wish I had gone this way independently a long time ago. For me, the thing about true crime is we know a lot about why people watch true crime, mostly you women. So 80% of true crime viewers are female. So that kind of blows away the whole idea of voyeurism. It's not about that. It's about soothing. It's about going through the emotional experience of feeling what it's like to stand in the shoes of another human being that you will never meet, but that you feel compassion towards because of what happened to them. It's about people genuinely feeling a need for legacy of justice. And I have never met an audience as kind and compassionate as the true crime group that follow me, that have cradled me through some of the most traumatic experiences of my life, who reminded me that you can't be cancelled when people try to cancel you. And I think that true crime often gets this idea that people are watching it for this voyeurism and titillation, and that's quite the contrary. In fact, research shows that people who watch true crime are more agreeable and empathic, and that's because most of them do tend to be females. So in the States, they've got a bigger population. YouTube is very good at pushing the algorithm as well in the States, so you do quite well if you're out there talking about it, doing your makeup even to it. In the UK, I think that there are less creators that necessarily have a big audience, but certainly the fact that true crime watchers want a diverse group of people to explore with and to go through documentary styles with and to do the makeup with even. The point is that you captivate an audience through good content. And for me, it's just been the most liberating experience, the most joyful experience. And of course, my research is diligent, but really, I'm just so grateful for the fact that that true crime audience exists and just has supported me in a million ways. It's as simple as that. And I feel so unbelievably humble. I'm sure you do. Just like, I just sit and I do what I love.
We've had a second chance, haven't we? And you're so right. We have had a second chance
Absolutely.
to do what we love and to do it because of our audience. And nothing means more than that. Nothing means more than that.
Nothing. I just feel like, how lucky did I get? You know, how blessed can I be? And I think losing everything during COVID just made the whole experience sweeter. I genuinely think sometimes you have to lose everything to recalibrate, reframe, and grow into the place and person you want to be. And I am never letting, I'm going to be the granny of crime, you know? I'm going to be the old
Well, no one can cancel you now. That is the incredible thing. The Daily Mail can't cancel you now. Who cares what they think? That is the brilliant thing. I am a huge fan of you personally, Emma, because of course you've been such a big support to me. You've appeared on my talk and my GB News shows, now Outspoken. It's brilliant. But I especially love your channel, Emma Kenny True Crime. And what I'm going to recommend today is that people check out your amazing video. I mean, 2 years ago, so it shows you how long you've been going on this. But your episode looking in depth into the Jill Dando unsolved murder is absolutely fascinating. 1 hour, 22 minutes, assassinated on her doorstep. And I'll make sure that we link to it in the show notes. So Emma Kenny, thank you so much for being here on Outspoken for the first time. And you know Peter McIlvenna of the brilliant Hearts of Oak podcast, which I also recommend everyone subscribe and follows. I always love having you, Peter. So thank you both so much. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.